What a shameless daughter-in-law you are! How dare you show your face here without being invited? And this New Year's feast, my cooking is more than enough. You shouldn't have meddled. A dull thud echoed as the lacquered box of dishes I had carefully prepared fell to the floor. It was tossed from her hands. The delicacies I spent days crafting spilled across the tatami floor. I froze in place, staring at the scattered black beans and broken rolls. Just a week ago, I had been so excited to try my hand at New Year's dishes. I thought Amelia, my mother-in-law, might finally approve of me. She had tasked me with preparing dishes for the extended family. I saw it as a chance to gain her recognition. Night after night, I worked late into the evening, and yet the only sound now was the hollow clatter of beans scattering across the silent room. I glanced at Kenneth, my husband, seated nearby, casually scrolling on his phone. He didn't even look up as his wife was being insulted. My chest tightened. A coldness seeped into my heart. Slowly, I lowered myself to a kneeling position. I bowed deeply. I'm sorry. I'll leave now. My voice trembled as I apologized. Shameless! You think a simple apology will suffice after you stole my son from me? I couldn't lift my head under the barrage of insults raining down on me. The words cut deeply. Tears welled up as regret and helplessness flooded over me. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It broke the tense silence. Let me help you with those dishes, Jessica. A calm but firm voice made me look up. Standing in the entryway was a woman I didn't recognize. She was dressed impeccably and holding a single envelope. Little did I know, the contents of that envelope would reveal the darkness festering within this twisted family. My name is Jessica Porter. I work in sales at a major corporation. My career was flourishing. A promotion was just around the corner. But in my personal life, I lived alone in the city. Despite being 28 years old, I shuffled between my apartment and office. Tonight, after another late night at work, I returned home to my quiet apartment. Eating a late dinner, I checked my personal phone. It buzzed with a notification. I sighed deeply. I opened a message from a high school friend. They asked me to give a speech at their upcoming wedding. Recently, many of my old friends have been sharing happy news about engagements and weddings. It's been a nonstop wedding rush. Even my college and work friends have joined the bandwagon. I can't help but feel a vague sense of unease. And this latest message from my high school friend felt like the final straw. That's when I decided I needed to start seriously thinking about marriage. With that resolve, I signed up for a matchmaking party. At one such party, I met a man who stood out to me. His name was Kenneth Miller. He was a 30-year-old systems engineer at a prominent IT company. Kenneth, like me, had been consumed by work and found little time to date. He shared how his family had been urging him to settle down, so he reluctantly attended the matchmaking event. I felt an instant connection with Kenneth. Unlike the assertive colleagues I was used to, he was gentle and soft-spoken. I was captivated by his calm demeanor and kindness. I thought with Kenneth, I could build a warm, loving home. I pursued him enthusiastically. A few months later, we promised to marry. Our relationship progressed smoothly. I introduced him to my parents first. Later, it was time to meet his family. My mom's a bit overbearing, but she means well. Please don't be put off. Kenneth's warning did little to prepare me for my first meeting with his mother. She greeted me with a bright smile, but her eyes betrayed a sharp coldness. I felt an instant hostility, as though she disapproved of me. Kenneth's father was notably absent. I found it odd for such an important meeting. Kenneth explained that his father had been away on long-term assignments for most of his childhood. Kenneth grew up in a household dominated by his mother. Jessica, if you're marrying Kenneth, you'll, of course, quit your job and become a full-time homemaker, won't you? Her question caught me off guard. I had no intention of leaving my career. Kenneth and I had already discussed this. He seemed supportive of my decision. I glanced at Kenneth for reassurance. Oh, Mom, I should have told you earlier. Jessica's planning to keep working. Absolutely not. If she's joining the Miller family, she must serve her husband. Her hands slammed against the table. The sound startled me. Kenneth suddenly dropped to the floor. He prostrated himself before his mother, crying, "I'm sorry, Mom. It's my fault for not setting things straight with her. Please forgive her." "Oh, Kenneth, you poor thing. You're not to blame." She gently stroked his back. "The one at fault here is her. Jessica, if you don't quit your job, I will not approve of this marriage." Her words shook me. I stammered out a response. I'll try to meet your expectations." That was all I could manage. I left their house with a heavy heart. On the way home, I replayed the events in my mind. Should I prioritize my career or my relationship? I thought about my parents' happy expressions during our first meeting. They had been thrilled about my engagement. If I chose work over marriage, it would crush them. In my hometown, traditional beliefs about a woman's happiness through marriage still ran deep. With that in mind, I made a decision. I would leave my job to marry Kenneth. Looking back, it was the worst decision I could have made. But at the time, I was desperate to fulfill everyone's expectations. It was the beginning of a long and painful journey. Our wedding was extravagant, orchestrated by Kenneth's family. However, the joy of the day was overshadowed by his mother's cold, piercing glares. Her looks felt like venomous snakes coiling around my heart. I sensed my marriage would be tumultuous. Unfortunately, my intuition was spot on. Kenneth and his mother's relationship remained unsettling. I often felt like an outsider in their bond. Our new home was just 15 minutes from his mother's house. She insisted on visiting frequently. What began as monthly visits soon turned into daily calls and unannounced drop-ins. I pleaded with Kenneth to talk to her. His responses were always dismissive. "She's just lonely without Dad around. Besides, she's helping you with the household chores, isn't she? You should be grateful." With that, he brushed off my concerns. His mother, a lifelong homemaker, had exacting standards for domestic tasks. Meanwhile, I had been used to focusing on my career. She scrutinized everything I did. "Jessica, you must create a comfortable home for Kenneth. He works hard to provide for you, so it's your duty." Her constant criticisms wore me down. She even belittled my cooking. Cooking had been my pride and joy. I used to share recipes on social media where they received rave reviews. "These dishes are nothing special." Her words chipped away at my confidence. Within 6 months, I had lost my will to argue. I began to believe I was at fault. "You've never taken homemaking seriously, have you? I can't accept you as Kenneth's wife." "I'm sorry, Heather." She left satisfied after each scolding session. One day, my sister-in-law Yvonne visited unexpectedly. "I'm sorry to intrude, Jessica, but I have something important to share." Her somber expression filled me with unease. "Is something wrong?" "I've noticed discrepancies in Kenneth's paycheck deposits." Yvonne managed the family's business's finances. She knew Kenneth's salary details. Her words alarmed me. "Kenneth says he's working late on a big project, and he gives me an allowance every month." "I see." She fell silent, her face clouded with concern. "Let me investigate further." Her tone was serious. As she left, I felt a growing unease. Kenneth had been distant lately. He often worked late or secluded himself in his office. Conversations between us had become rare. I couldn't help but feel that Yvonne's concerns were connected to his behavior. I also noticed his mother had been unusually absent. Days passed, and the unease in my heart grew stronger. Then one day, Kenneth's mother called me. "Jessica, I assume you've been keeping yourself busy. For this New Year's, we're hosting relatives, and I want you to prepare the traditional dishes." "You want me to cook for everyone?" 5 servings should suffice." "I'd be happy to." "Don't embarrass me." Her words stung, but I saw this as an opportunity. If I could impress her with my cooking, perhaps she would finally accept me. I poured my heart into preparing the dishes. I practiced and refined every recipe, working late into the night. By New Year's, I had created a spread I was proud of. On the big day, I arrived at Kenneth's family home with the food. Yvonne greeted me warmly. "Oh, Jessica, this looks amazing. You've outdone yourself." Her words filled me with relief and hope. But Kenneth's mother was unimpressed. "Why is she here? And what is this mess you've brought?" She glared at me with disdain. Before I could respond, she picked up the tray of food and threw it to the ground. Dishes I had painstakingly prepared were now scattered across the floor. My heart sank. Kenneth sat in the corner, glued to his phone. He didn't look up, didn't say a word. Tears welled up in my eyes as I knelt to clean up the mess. I turned to Kenneth's mother and bowed deeply. "I'm sorry. I'll leave now." "You think a simple apology will fix this? You're nothing but a failure who stole my son." Her words cut deep. I fought back tears, ashamed of my weakness. Then the doorbell rang. Yvonne walked in, holding a large envelope. "Good afternoon, everyone. I need to speak with all of you." Her calm yet firm tone commanded attention. Kenneth's mother stiffened. Yvonne's presence seemed to unsettle her. "Jessica, please sit down." I hesitated, but complied. "Kenneth, there's something I need to address." Kenneth finally looked up, his face pale. "I reviewed the company's financial records, and I found some serious discrepancies." Kenneth's expression turned to panic. "Would you care to explain where the missing funds have gone?" I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me. The evidence is clear. And you, Amelia, knew about this, didn't you?" She turned to Kenneth's mother, whose face was now flushed with anger. "How dare you accuse me?" "I'm not accusing you. I have proof." She pulled out the envelope and placed it on the table. "This contains detailed records of Kenneth's financial misconduct and Amelia's involvement in covering it up." The room fell silent. Kenneth and his mother were visibly shaken. I sat there, stunned, as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The weight of Yvonne's words filled the room with tension. This is a misunderstanding." "Is it? Then why do these bank transfers lead back to your personal account?"
"I can explain."
Kenneth's voice trembled, but Yvonne's piercing gaze silenced him. "You've been stealing from the company, Kenneth. And Amelia, you've been helping him."
Kenneth's mother stood abruptly. "That's enough. This is our family's business. It's none of your concern."
"It became my concern the moment it threatened the company's stability."
Yvonne's firm tone left no room for argument. Kenneth slumped into his chair, defeated. His mother glared at Yvonne, but she said nothing further. I remained silent, overwhelmed by the revelations.
"Jessica, you deserve better than this. Kenneth and Amelia's actions don't define you. Don't let them manipulate you into thinking otherwise."
Yvonne's words struck a chord in me. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I turned to Kenneth, who avoided my gaze. "Is this true?" Kenneth didn't respond.
"Jessica, you need to make a decision. Are you going to stay in this toxic environment? Or are you going to reclaim your life?"
The room was silent as everyone awaited my response. I took a deep breath, mustering the courage to speak. "I'm done. I've tried to earn your approval, Amelia, but it's clear that I'll never be good enough for you. And Kenneth, I can't believe the person I thought I loved would betray me like this. I'm leaving."
"How dare you? You think you can just walk away?"
I stood, looking her directly in the eye. "Watch me." With that, I turned and walked out of the house. Yvonne followed me, offering her support.
"You're stronger than you know, Jessica. This is the first step toward a better life."
I nodded, grateful for her kindness. As I left the house, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was free. Yvonne helped me into her car, offering a supportive smile as I buckled my seatbelt.
"Let's get you somewhere safe and quiet."
"Thank you, Yvonne. I don't know what I'd do without you right now." The drive was silent, but it was a comforting silence. Yvonne dropped me off at a small apartment she had arranged through a friend.
"Take your time to settle in. You're not alone, Jessica."
Her words were reassuring, and I felt a flicker of hope. The apartment was cozy, with sunlight streaming through the windows. As I sat on the couch, letting the reality of my decision sink in, for the first time in years, I was alone, not lonely, but free. Over the following weeks, I worked with a lawyer to finalize the divorce. Kenneth tried to reach out several times, but I didn't answer. I wasn't interested in his excuses or apologies. My lawyer assured me that the evidence Yvonne gathered would ensure a fair settlement. During this time, I also reconnected with old friends. I had distanced myself from them during my marriage, but they welcomed me back with open arms. Their support reminded me of who I was before Kenneth and his mother's influence. Yvonne continued to check in on me regularly. "How are you feeling today?" "Better. It's strange, but I feel lighter." "That's a good sign." Yvonne smiled, her kindness and strength unwavering. As the weeks turned into months, I began to rebuild my life. I found a job at a marketing firm, something I had always been passionate about. It felt empowering to rely on myself again. On a sunny afternoon, I signed the final divorce papers.
"Congratulations, Jessica. You're officially free."
I smiled, feeling a surge of relief and closure. That evening, I celebrated with Yvonne and my closest friends. "To new beginnings. To Jessica's future." The toast felt like a declaration of my newfound independence. Kenneth and his mother no longer held power over me. The life I was creating was my own. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on my journey. It had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I finally understood what Yvonne had meant when she said I deserved better. I did deserve better, and now I was living it. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose and a smile on my face. This was the start of a new chapter, one I was determined to write on my own terms.